Do I want to hit anything before we get to Paul, or do you want to get to Paul?
Let's get to Paul Jones. Let's get Jonesy up here right now.
Okay, so when we come
Jonesy
back,
promoting a big charity for breakfast. It's a breakfast children's charity. We'll touch on that in a couple minutes. He's on the other side of this.
Okay, on the other side of, once again, property and courtesy of our friends at ESPN, enshrinement speech by the legendary and sometimes controversial Allen Iverson.
I love y'all too. Wow. First, I just want to thank God for loving me and blessing me. I thank Him for blessing me to be the man that I am and have no regrets on being the guy that I am and the person that my family love and my friends love, my teammates love, my fans love. I want to thank Mr. Colangelo in the Hall of Fame for honoring me in such a great way. It's truly a blessing, and I'm humbled by it. I want to thank Coach Thompson. Coach Thompson for saving my life. For giving me the opportunity. I was recruited by every school in the country for football and basketball. And an incident happened in high school, and all that was taken away. No other teams, no other schools were recruiting me anymore. My mom went to Georgetown and begged him to give me a chance, and he did. And that's crazy to think that you're the best football player in the world, which I did, and to be sitting up here as a Hall of Famer in basketball. You tell me God ain't good.
Wow, that is something else. That, of course, the legendary Allen Iverson. That was his speech as he's being enshrined, the enshrinement speech they call it in the Basketball Hall of Fame. And he just mentioned about his basketball or his football career in high school, because he's a Philly guy through and throughout. And I said, just before we get to the end of the show, I'm going to show you some of his high school football highlights. So you're going to see him playing quarterback like he's in the show. You're going to see him returning kicks. You're going to see him making tackles. Probably one of the most amazing athletes that I think I've ever seen, and most people, I think, would feel that way. And for more, on rawmike.richards.com, we go to the amazing Paul Jones, play-by-play guy for the Raptors.
Allen Iverson came in with a flair into the NBA, even before that, when he went to college at Georgetown because of the bowling alley brawl and all of that.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that we're still kind of going through this stuff in America and North America and in life in the world, 25, 30, whatever years later. But the guy was a terrific athlete. And I will say this. Larry Brown laughed at, the famous quote, practice.
Yeah.
You talk about practice. Larry Brown said he said practice more times than he actually did. But I'll say this, having covered the NBA since the Raptors' inception, over a probably 12-year period, and he's not 6 foot 185. He's not, because I've got a picture of me standing beside him interviewing him. My kids are like, Dad, that's Allen Iverson. I'm like, yeah, you're taller than him. I'm 6'1".
Yeah.
He's like, I give him 5'10", 145 pounds, sopping wet, and nobody in the NBA played harder for 10 years. the guy's amazing.
I know a lot of people, have these, and just how fans are. They, morally and ethically, they have a certain feeling, whether they're right or wrong, Jonesy, whether they're right or wrong. There's a connection that sometimes people either like a guy or dislike a guy. And I said, but when you're looking at the actual skill of the individual,
yes,
regardless, because I'll be honest, most of the times, whatever you think you probably don't. You're not there.
Yeah.
You get it secondhand, third hand, you get TMZ. That's what you get.
Yeah.
We don't really know him. There was that perception of thug. That word thug comes up with that. That's a lot of connotations when you use a word like that.
That's
very heavy, right?
That's a new age word for something else.
Yes. So that's a heavy, heavy word. But people sort of would throw this stuff around. But the reality is, when you watched what he did and how he did it, most of the time after he'd go hard to the board, he was laid out somewhere on the baseline because he just got cracked and cranked. But he broke more ankles. Not his own, other people's ankles. Yeah. And I said, I don't know. And you use that word playing hard. I mean, regardless of what you think of his practice ethic and everything else, the reality was as the God-gifted individual that he is, and he talked about that in his speech, I haven't seen many that ever look like him in any sport.
You guys got a good thing going here.
It's very nice.
Good thing going here. Now, and I can see you're both on. So my question would be, as I put my principal teacher hat on.
Oh, here we go.
Yes.
You both had breakfast this morning, didn't you? Oh, come on.
Does rye in a chocolate bar count?
Well, it's not exactly the best fuel,
No,
but
I was going to say
you got something in your stomach.
If
right?
Kellogg made a rye, I'm in. I'm just saying, because you know why? It tastes great.
Tony,
there you go.
Yeah.
No, well, but I mean that's when David got in contact with the good people at Strategic Objectives and asked if I would come down and come on, I would definitely love to champion that cause. Kellogg's has got a wonderful program going with Breakfast Clubs of Canada that, by the way, feed over 200,000 kids with a little over, just under 1,600 breakfast programs in school every day. I mean, I always say it, it's like they're so popular and they're so good. It's like Leaf tickets and basketball tickets at the University of Kentucky. There's a huge waiting list now for breakfast programs in schools. And I can tell you firsthand that when I went to my first school in York Region as a principal, a breakfast program was started there the year I got there.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Wait a minute. You were a principal?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, man, yeah.
You didn't read the notes.
No.
I don't read. That's never come out. That's there's another story for you.
23 years in education.
Oh, yeah.
Teacher, vice principal, principal.
So you go to York.
I go to Western for Teachers College and my master's degree in sports psychology, and I wanted to coach kids. And where do you coach? In schools.
Sure you do.
So I started teaching, and then I kind of...
Well, I'm a York Region guy. I'm a York County guy.
I kind of got pushed into administration. At times, I think I never wanted to leave the classroom because I didn't have my fingerprints, that impact on the kids, the way you really shape lives.
Amen. Yes.
Especially in grades, middle school, where I loved it, where people would run from kids in grade 6, 7, and 8. And
tough. That's tough.
Preteens and teens, but I love that age because
did.
that's the last chance to really mold them before they get into high school and they get set in their ways. And so when I came to York Region, we had a breakfast program, and I was like, yeah, okay. I guess I kind of took it for granted, but I had no idea the impact that breakfast had. Like, kids go to school hungry.
Oh, a lot of them
kids go to school hungry, and
do.
then Kellogg's has done a survey with teachers and Breakfast Clubs of Canada that say 95% of kids that come to school without being fed, without nourishment, without the proper fuel, don't focus well.
Oh,
they engage in bullying behavior.
Yep.
I'll tell you this: in York Region, we have the school day is divided into blocks.
Mm-hmm.
So we have our literacy block, which is now 100 minutes in York Region. A kid loses, on average, 113 minutes a day when they don't come to school nourished, when there's no breakfast. You know how long the literacy block is in York Region right now? 100 minutes. So think about it. Reading, writing, speaking, listening, all that interacting around literacy, it's gone if the kid hasn't had breakfast. And the year that I went to York Region, teachers would say, like, well, hey, David's doing well this year. So is Mike. I'm like, well, what's the problem? Well, I think the breakfast is making a big difference for you.
Sure it is.
And it was a religious a church that came in and started it right in the hallway of a very difficult school that I had. And it was terrific. It was terrific.
It makes a lot of sense for you as a former principal to be teamed up with Kellogg's in this situation. How long have you been part of this? Because this is the 2017 version of it, and I'm hoping this is something that goes on for generations from now, just and keep on building the program as it goes.
Kellogg's has had it for a few years, and I know there were some very lofty names that went before me, and this is my second year involved in it. Right. And I just think it's such a great cause, and there are people that go above and beyond, and Kellogg's actually has to recognize those people that put the time into breakfast clubs. They actually have an award, and it's Kellogg's Feeding Better Days award.com. That's the website.
Yeah.
The nominations close at midnight Friday, 11:59, and somebody gets $10,000 towards the breakfast program in their school if you kind of nominate and reward that volunteer. It's just the stats around what breakfast does for kids are incredible.
Well, it becomes, I think, vital. My family's, they're all teachers. My father, my brother, my wife is a teacher. Elementary school. She's
so she knows.
Oh,
she knows. And in your world, when she comes home, and I don't know what she teaches, but
she's grade 1.
Okay, well, I walk down to the kindergarten room, which is, you know what? I'd rather walk on hot coals than be in there with 24-year-olds. Like I can only handle, I can barely handle one or two.
Careful.
Like
I got one in kindergarten this year.
I know, and you got one. Imagine that teacher. So you walk down to that room, and in her world, when the crayons are broken, it's the end of life is going to stop. To us, it's nothing, and it's the same with those kids. Like, the kid needs to eat. Well, not a big deal. Well, to that kid, it's a huge deal, and you can tell.
You can tell because that sort of glazed over look, because they start to fade a little bit. It's just there's no gas in the tank. So you combine the fact that they're fading physically, and so it affects them mentally. Let's say you're in middle school now, and you like athletics. That phys ed's going to be a part of it. Well, now whatever they've saved left because maybe they like sports, now that's burned out of them too.
Yeah.
So if they are now literally starving themselves, what chance do they have of finishing the last couple of blocks that they have in their day? And or what if they play after school sports? You're talking about these young kids, children. We're talking about children who are literally operating on no fuel, zero.
There are two chances, and Slim just left town.
Yes.
And I mean, we talked about the 113 minutes. So extrapolate that over, that's like 2 hours of a 6-hour day. Extrapolate that over kindergarten to grade 12. A kid has lost 4 years of education.
Not to say what it does to his attitude. Now you got an attitude problem.
Now you got an attitude problem. Now you got behavior problems. Now it impacts and affects the whole class.
Sure,
like that
does.
one kid that's acting out or having an issue. So I love that Kellogg's is promoting, with Breakfast Clubs of Canada. I love that they've done the research. They've talked to teachers like your wife, professionals, and asked them what the impact is. And you've got these numbers that, they always say there are lies, untruths, and then there are numbers. But I don't think these numbers lie when you kind of live it firsthand.
Now, were you like the Morgan Freeman principal when he played Joe?
Crazy Joe Clark.
Yeah.
No,
No one's leaving the room now. Now you go back to class there.
At times. Look, I went to school fed every day, and there were times that the fuse was like this short, and it's like, oh no, they're sending Bastel down to the office again. I'm going to kill that kid. I'm going to strangle him. And he comes in. It's like, hello, Mr. Jones. It's like, oh gosh, we know who the frequent flyers were. And you know what, Mike? The sad thing was, I can look back now. It was early in the morning, usually before recess. What do you trace it back to?
Yeah, well, it's true.
Kid didn't eat.
We're joined by Paul Jones here on rawmikerichards.com in the studio, 234 King Street East, downtown Toronto. We're talking about the breakfast program, courtesy of our friends at Kellogg's, but we're also certainly going to talk about basketball. We had Allen Iverson, his enshrinement speech coming into the interview today, and of course we're going to talk about the Raptors because this was a very turbulent, in terms of basketball movement, where there were some major names, and it was like
off-season was better than the regular season.
Who's going where? And
the soap opera was better.
And it just seems like there are some very strong feelings, even amongst basketball fans. So when you take a look at the East, and so it's LeBron and friends yet again because he is that good. Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people are going to argue about
who's working the board here.
That's roast beef. He goes by roast beef.
Yeah. So roast beef.
Yes.
Our Lady Victoria for strategic objectives. Like maybe roast beef could be our sixth man.
Yep.
Victoria.
So already he's off the starting roster.
Well,
that was fast, man.
Well, hold on a second.
Tell you.
Hold on a second.
You're right. You're
right.
right.
Keep Victoria off the starting roster?
No, I want her on the starting roster. Trust me on that one.
So the three of us, Victoria and LeBron, I think we could come seventh in the
I was going to
East.
say get knocked out in the quarterfinals.
That's okay. Yeah. That's okay. Take the bonus check.
It is remarkable. And so people take a look before the season has started and they go, okay, so if Cleveland is 1, there's an assumption that Boston is 2, but I think there's also an assumption that they have formed this team, or Danny Ainge has looked at this as, well, if LeBron decides to not stay, which a lot of people think that he's not, then they can then assume that top position. But I don't know how accurate that is because, look, Danny Ainge is a pretty competitive guy if you've come across him.
Yeah.
But from a strategic standpoint, if someone told me that's what they have done, because they're not better than Cleveland. At least I don't think they are. To think that they're going to then, with some of the players they've acquired, to be that team if and should LeBron leave, kind of makes sense a little bit.
It does. And you would hope if you're Danny Ainge, you haven't, like, you're planning this to be right there in case. Now, LeBron's a tank. Look up his games played. Like, the guy, unless he wants a rest, he doesn't miss a game.
Yeah.
And, like, I've been calling these games for, like 20 years. And you see him tweaking ankles like, oh, LeBron's hurt. No, he's not.
No.
You just need to tighten it. It
Yeah.
looks like the tire's wobbling. You just have to tighten the lug nut, and it's fine. If LeBron does indeed leave, Boston's in a good spot. Mm-hmm. But you would hate to think, if you're Danny Ainge, okay, I'm doing all this planning because he's leaving, but I gave them that pick from Brooklyn, which is probably going to be a top 5 pick.
Top 3 pick.
So now they trade it, and LeBron's got a couple of good players or good
yeah.
assets, and he says, no, I'm staying.
Yeah.
As opposed to Kramer, who says I'm out. He says,
yeah.
no, I'm staying. I'm staying.
Yeah,
and
right.
now you're Danny Ainge going, that backfired.
Yeah.
But I think Boston and Cleveland have both strengthened themselves. And if you're Charlotte, if you're Washington, if you're Toronto, if you're Milwaukee, you're looking going, what the heck? You guys trade with each other to make each other better? And no, that's no good.
Well, see, and when you talk to old school guys, so if you get into sort of the Magic Larry Bird era, that would be my era, probably your era as well. And as much as we're friends, like, I want to beat you.
I want to beat you. Yeah.
I'm not necessarily going to the owner, hey, Mr. Bastel, could you bring Jonesy over and then maybe Jonesy, you could call Victoria and we'll get this thing going. Back in the day, the mindset wasn't like that.
No.
It's very, very different.
What's changed it is the AAU ball, fellas. The fact that kids, I was at my cousin's place the other day, and he lives in Brampton, and his kids are, and like they're all over the place. And kids play AAU together, and they come up knowing one another and playing against each other.
That's very interesting. I never thought of it that
10,
way.
10, 11, 12. So they get to university, and they're like 17, 18. It's like, oh, yeah, I know David. I've been playing against him since and they're buddies. And they think of it, you said, Mike, the mindset is different. It's like, hey, I'm trying to win, but why don't you come with me and we could win together?
Yeah.
And that's, whereas back in the day, like, the Bird Magic saga, they really didn't want to know anything about each other.
Especially Larry, because trust me, people say, well, is there a good guy and a bad guy? Yeah, the bad guy was Larry.
Yeah.
The bad guy was Larry Bird. Trust me on that.
It's just a shift in the mindset right now. And I don't know if you had a chance to see the ESPN 30 for 30 on the Lakers and the Celtics. It was riveting. I watch it with my 2 young sons, and they didn't understand the intensity of it. Kurt Rambis getting tackled out of midair by McHale. Like, McHale would have been suspended for like half the season now. They just called it a shooting foul. Like, it's just they just dislike each other. Mm-hmm. And even now they guys say, if I see so and so, I'm not talking to him.
Yeah.
There was that deep dislike.
The Raptors. Oh, sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
No. I wanted to touch more on the Eastern Conference and maybe not those upper echelon teams that you talked about, but the Philadelphias and the Milwaukees, the next in line,
yes,
so to speak. How good are the 76ers going to be? How good are the Bucks going to be? We saw what they have at center and the centerpiece of maybe the best big man in the NBA right now.
Yeah.
do those teams do anything this upcoming season, considering they've stockpiled for so long?
Milwaukee, I would be leery of if you're like a Toronto or a Washington or a Boston, because they're coming. And Giannis Antetokounmpo is a terrific, as you say, David, centerpiece. You get the right people around him. They've had some playoff experience.
Yep.
Like he's been in the playoffs 2 of 3 seasons now. Been knocked out both times in 6 games. He's a guy that the fire's starting to burn with him. People are all over Philadelphia, and I went to Las Vegas for Summer League, and my wife's like, how can you win a half a game? Because the over-under number was like, 40 and a half.
Did you take your wife to Vegas?
Yes.
Just wondering. Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And you know what?
I thought this was going somewhere. Now I know it's not.
No, she is. She became pretty good at like knowing the blackjack strategy. She's like, 5, that's a dealer bus card. Okay, we'll hit this one. I'm like,
Excuse me?
Cow, I've created a monster. And she'd look at the 3 and go, that's a dealer bus card. Should we double here on this 11? I'm like, yeah, that would be a good idea, honey. But the over-under numbers are set, and Philadelphia's is like, to me, it's incredibly high. They have David, great potential on paper with Embiid and Markelle Fultz, and like they've got.
Now Simmons is actually going to play.
Simmons might look like he
Well,
might.
we think
play.
so. We think so.
It's like,
But they haven't done anything yet.
Yeah.
So and then I'm a little skeptical about that number. But then we both know those dudes in Vegas, like when they set a number or a line, they're close usually. Sometimes they're way off.
They're
but
pretty good. They're pretty damn good.
I remember last year, I took my family. We were in Oakland, Golden State, Toronto. The number on the game was 9.5. Toronto was up down 8 with 30 seconds to go. Yeah. And Steph Curry made a jumper to make it 10, and it's like there's like 10 seconds to go, and nobody cares. And like if you bet, that just changed the game.
Yeah.
And Toronto had 2 shots to get it back to 8, and Kevin Durant blocked them like he was playing in the NBA championship. Yep. And if you're watching a TV in Vegas, you're cursing it.
That's never happened to David.
No,
we don't know what you're talking about.
No.
Never heard of this.
And it's never happened to me either, which is why I recall it so vividly, right? Like, but those guys in Vegas, they set that number. And they're close. So the number they have for Philly at first look is like, Bastel, how much money did you lose on what I just described?
No, there's roast beef is crying over there in the corner. You can't see him, but he's very upset over what you're saying.
You look at that, not to sidetrack that, but you look at that on a lot of other sports. It's that, team down by 7.
Oh, the back or cover touchdown.
Yeah, exactly. Or down by 10, you're not going to kick the field goal. You got to go for the touchdown. No, just kick the field goal.
Yeah.
I get within my points.
Yeah.
Just do it. And it's never happened.
But they're close. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. My point is they've set that number for Philly. As much as I go, they're not getting near that.
But the thing that you're talking about, it's a little bit of frustration from mine, and that is with the I want to play with my friends attitude, or someone who stockpiles a lot of potentially great players. It always kind of comes down to me.
Or assets, Mike.
Or assets.
Because Danny Ainge traded 9 people to get Kevin Garnett, and 2 years later he won and then next year he won a championship.
But if we're talking personnel, so I always take a look at, and I'll use Coach Cal. So I'll use Kentucky as an example.
Okay.
So they get the, what do they call them, the 4-diamond or the 5-star recruits, that and so you want to play for Coach Cal because the reality is
you're going to the league.
You're going to the league. So I'm spending 1 year with Coach Cal. He's written books about it. This is his connection to it. But it takes usually Kentucky. So they're going to watch. So people watch like an early game, and they're playing like,
They're playing 2-direction U.
Yeah,
Small brother state.
But even a team you're kind of familiar with, maybe someone from the Colonial or something, and they only win by like 11 or something. I'm like, these are high school kids who have never played together. They're from the 4 different parts of the country. So it takes them not only a period of time to get used to each other.
Yes.
They also are immature because that's what happens when you coach these young guys. And then you have to learn how to play team defense.
Yes.
So that all takes time. The genius, I think, of Coach Cal, because I do like John Calipari. Like, I do think he's a very accountable man, is that he finds ways to make those personalities and finds way to apply discipline, which I think all kids need anyway. And they buy into it. He's got a huge buy-in factor. In the pros, it depends. Because I look at when LeBron and friends first go to Miami.
Yes.
The first difficulty they had, it wasn't, what are you going to do? They only have 1 ball. It wasn't the offense. It's playing team defense.
Yes.
Because the really good teams, even though fans recognize, what happens in Golden State. Nobody talks about their defense.
Who, by the way, are one of the best defensive
nobody
teams
talks about that.
Yeah.
Because that is the essence of basketball. If I stop you, I can give it to Dave. We can score as many points as we want, but I need to stop you from scoring. And to me, that's basketball.
Yeah, and that's what makes, I think, it's difficult for a team like the Houston Rockets and Mike D'Antoni's system. And it looks like they're trying to gather a few more, quote, defensive type guys now. I mean, Chris Paul's, a regular on the all defensive team. But, as Dwane Casey calls it, the windshield wiper game. you can't win those. They're tough to win. They really are.
Now, looking at the roster, and sorry, Dave, the one puzzle that I have when I look at
you talking about the Raptors roster?
Yeah, about the Raptors roster.
Okay.
If I'm Jonas Valanciunas, I'm having difficulty understanding why you might want me so bad. I feel like maybe I'm lost a little bit because I think he is of big value, but in the system that I'm seeing, if I'm him, I would and I don't think he is this way, but is there a frustration? Because I look at it and I'm like, well, it's not centered around what he does now. Again, basketball's changed, a little more small ball, it's got all that things going on.
Yep.
But Jonas, to me, if I'm his people, I'm thinking, there's got to be someone else out there, isn't there?
My analogy would be in this microwave society where you rip the top off and throw it in the microwave, Jonas is like a can opener. You need it sometimes, but not all the time. But you need it. Sometimes, like you go to the store and before you can throw it on a plate and throw it in the microwave, you got to pop the can open. And in a slow down game or in a game when you do have a more traditional center, when you play Utah and there's a Rudy Gobert that's where you need Jonas for rebounding, for rim protection, for making that guy run the floor and tiring that guy out. So you're right, Mike. The game is changing, but there are still some basic tenets and things that you need to have. And it will always be a big man's game. Now, it's moving towards big, mobile, and agile.
Yeah, you got to be you have to have feet now as a 7-footer.
But it still will always be a big person's game. So I mean, if you're Jonas, I think the Raptors. It's not that you want to get rid of him. If you can get something that will fit better, great. But I think he's still a useful player in some games at particular times. When the game slows down in the playoffs at times, depending on who's on the floor, when you need rebounding. Like he came off the bench in that Milwaukee series after the debacle that was Game 3. He came off the bench and he was really effective because of who he was playing with and who he was playing against and the style of play that the game called for.
If he was to be moved in that scenario that may or may not happen,
right?
What would you want back that you could use more than a can opener?
Another smaller microwave. I can heat food up quickly. I can get leftovers in.
We should have GE sponsor the show or something with all these. What's going on
we're
here?
onto something.
I mean, I think as Mike said, the way the league's going, you need 3-and-D guys. You need big, long, athletic players on the perimeter that can defend and that can make threes and run the floor. And we're moving towards, and this is funny because the youngins don't understand this. We're moving back towards positionless basketball.
Yeah, because the center position is kind of obsolete, isn't it?
Well, and I'll say when Joe Dumars and Isaiah Thomas played together in the backcourt for Detroit, who was the point guard? Who was the two guard? Did it matter?
Yeah.
I'll take it this time. You take it next time. They could both shoot. They could both score. They could both defend. They were both great passers. You look at, people say, you look at LeBron. Like I laughed at this when I covered the finals for those years in Miami. They say, oh, Miami's going small with LeBron at the 4. I'm like, hold on a second. The guy's a tank. He's a moving truck. He's 6'9".
That's
or
never
6'8",
small to be.
265. By the way, that's bigger than the dude Joel Anthony, who's your center at 6'8", 250, and the guy Udonis Haslem, who's your power forward at 6'8", 245. And they're going small.
They're going small.
It's more skilled, and it's, as you said, David, positionless. So if I was to make a move, I would probably look for a guy like that, a versatile guy that could play. I mean, you look at Kevin Durant. He's 6'11".
Yep.
Shoots from 3. He defends. He's become a better rebounder. Like he is he is one of the, arguably.
I thought he was tremendous last season.
Top 2 or 3
like the
players
difference
in the game.
maker, the
He
ultimately
was.
difference maker.
He was.
And it's funny when we talk about basketball this way from a strategic standpoint, from an X's and O standpoint, the fact that we use the term small ball the way we do, and there's a reason why we do it. But do you think it was the line in the sand where we start talking about the agile 7-footer, the big guy all of a sudden who's fading away, taking threes? Is it Dirk? Are we really talking about Dirk as
Those
the line in the
kinds of
sand?
guys? Yeah, those kinds of guys, because all the kids now that are big, they're like, hey, I want to play on the outside, because that's the way the game is. That's the way the game's gone. I mean, it was revolutionary when Magic Johnson came in at 6'9", handling the ball. They're like, dude, get your backside under the basket. He's like, no, I can handle it outside. They're like, well, you're wasting it out there. And then all of a sudden, as my youngest loves to say, in the movie Despicable Me, when the guy gets a light bulb, right? Yeah. Like that's what happens. People are like, wait a minute. If we get big guys that can run the floor and handle the ball and play on the outside, who guards them? And that's the quandary with LeBron. He's too big for a little guy when he uses little guy skills on the outside. So he goes inside, and then, it's okay, we'll put a bigger guy on him, and he backs up and he says, okay, big guy, come on out here where the air is a little bit thinner for you. So it's the versatility in the game that you're really, really looking for.
Expectations on the Raptors season, if we're, crystal balling it going into October's training camp and so forth, where are we looking at this Raptor team finishing up at the end of it?
I still see them as a top 4 seed in the East, a home court seed. I mean, if people want to concede Cleveland, Boston, and I might concede Cleveland, the state motto on the license plate for Missouri is the show me state, because they don't believe anything. You got to show me.
Yeah.
You got to show me.
Sure.
They lost 5 guys, Boston, that were instrumental in forming, developing their culture. Kelly Olynyk, Amir Johnson, Avery Bradley, Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder. Those were guys that Boston was always known as a college-type team that played hard. They played together. I just called 5 guys that really, with the exception of maybe Isaiah, because he had the ball a lot.
Sure.
But guys that sacrificed for the team when you talk about Crowder. And
it's a big change.
Toronto fans know what Amir Johnson's like. He's 25 going on 90. Like, it looks like he bends over to tie his shoes and he's not going to straighten up again. And they lost that guy. No surprise that Brian Colangelo took him in Philly. Said, I'll take that guy.
Sure.
I know what he can bring to the locker room. So they lost 5 guys that really. Now, Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving are terrific players. And Brad Stevens is a great coach. But let's put it together before we start.
Yeah, and as you mentioned,
awarding things.
They're very good players that you just mentioned, but they're not franchise players.
No.
Like, let's not confuse, who's a franchise
Kyrie
and who's not.
maybe. Kyrie, people might look at him like that, but now he's going to have a different kind of pressure.
Be careful
on
what
him.
you ask for, because now you're number 1, baby, and boy, oh boy, I'll tell you, that's a different kind of world.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. So, David, to your question, I still see Toronto as a top 4 seed. I mean,
who's the third team in there?
I would say Washington.
Okay.
You got to be leery of Washington. Yeah. But like last year, Toronto got the short straw. They drew Cleveland in the semi, and they got swept.
Right.
Boston somehow or other won a game, so Cleveland lost. Another year where they, run roughshod through the East, and they've lost 1 game on their way to the finals. So there's my top 4.
Yeah.
For our Canadian basketball fans, and that is those that grow up in this country, usually now it's a prep school stop, and then maybe it's a one and done at a major university. It just seems to be the way it is. I wish it wasn't. I still miss seeing guys out there who are, God forbid, seniors.
Well, but to your point, Mike, look at who was the Rookie of the Year this year. Malcolm Brogdon, a 5-year player at the University of Virginia, and
Virginia too. That's very odd.
We've always, the guy's got his master's in administration. I think he's going to be president one day. But we downplay that. Well, I mean, if he's like you said, he's a junior, he's a senior. If he's any good, he would have left already. Hold on a second. We've got kids. They develop at different rates. They don't all walk at the same time or get their teeth at the same time. They're all on different developmental continuums and curves. Look at Norman Powell, a 4-year player at UCLA.
Yeah.
Guy's done well.
Yeah.
So don't downplay that. I'm with you. Like, I don't mind.
Like, can you imagine some of the teams that Coach Calipari's had if he had them for 4 years?
Oh yeah.
Like, I wouldn't even want to see what that would look like.
Yeah.
And then those guys move on, because this is what we're talking about, in the day where you did graduate.
Yeah.
And then they're almost professional at that point.
Yes.
At that point, now you almost have like a mini D league on your own team, because you got to work with these kids. I mean, look at how many guys in the Raptors where they're still probably 2-3 years away.
I'm always amazed at times the phrases I hear Dwane Casey using when I'm sitting courtside. They're the same phrases I used when I was coaching middle school.
Yeah.
2 hands, cut hard, block out, rebound. I always joke that one day when I was coaching middle school, I'm going to make a continuous loop of tapes and just hit the button, and you'll hear the same phrases all the time. It's kind of like people of our vintage when you watch the Flintstones and Gazoo made the 2 clones of Fred and Barney. One said yes, yes, yes. The other said no, no, no. like I'm going to coach.
That's right, dum-dum.
And Dwane Casey, he's still teaching, Mike, because you're right.
Absolutely
they come into the league so young. And the thing, when you got a 3-year, 4-year player out of university, the kid he'd matured a little bit. He'd been taught basketball. So he had a basketball base, and now you could teach him the NBA game. Now in the league, you're trying to teach both the basketball and the NBA game. It's hard.
And not everyone's qualified. I think that's why Dave and I are huge Dwane Casey guys. I mean, I just think he's and I use the word accountable a lot, because not everybody is. I mean, there are some coaches that are set up to have all-stars on their team, and that has its own challenge too. But I think where Coach Casey is, he actually is like a hybrid.
He calls it a program, Mike. Whenever you talk to him, and he's a University of Kentucky guy, he refers to his team, the Raptors, or what's going on there as the program, because they do. They take guys in, they develop them. You look at Norman Powell, you look at DeLon Wright, you look at even Valanciunas, you look at Kyle Lowry when he was traded here and what he came here as and how they sat him down and talked to him. And it goes back to what you said before, Mike, that anybody can coach. I got a book full of plays at home with X's and O's, and this guy goes here and you screen there and you cut here and this guy passes here. But can you be, as a coach, whether it's at the middle school level with your grade 7 girls team or the NBA level with millionaires and billionaires on your team, can you be a leader of people? Can you get them to buy into the greater good for the team and sacrifice? And that, to me, that's what coaching's all about. Anybody can X and O, but can you be a leader of people?
Now, the one thing I was going to say with respect to Canadian basketball fans was Andrew Wiggins and that Minnesota team.
Yes.
Now, I think they're going to be a little better, even though people think
they've
they're
got
going to
a
be good.
high number in Vegas too.
I was going to say.
I would think that
Couple
number.
additions and the
I
number
would put that number
skyrockets.
pretty high. I think this is a team that's going to be as good as people think they're going to be. They have the potential, I think, of being a little better.
Yeah.
It's going to be a tough team.
To me, Philadelphia could be this year's Minnesota, where I'd have all these expectations, like last year with Minnesota, and it just didn't go. And that could be Philadelphia this year. Maybe I'll be wrong on that, but
Well, it depends how much in Vegas how much you wagered.
Yeah.
Really, Jones, is what we're talking about.
I didn't.
The thousands and thousands that you may have spent on that.
It's all at table 42 at the Palms Casino at the blackjack table. All those pretty colored chips.
Yeah.
Those were mine.
Yeah. Oh God. God.
But Minnesota has that. They've got the coaching with Tom Thibodeau. They've got the young stars with Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns, and now they have some veterans with Jimmy Butler and Jeff Teague and people that have been around a little bit that can pull Wiggins and Towns aside, especially a Jimmy Butler in Chicago, and say, hey, kid, I played for Tibbs. Like, I know he's killing you right now, but don't worry. If he didn't kill you, he loves you because he's killing you.
And you need those vets.
Yes.
People say, that's what you're talking about Philadelphia. That's great. Who's their veteran?
They got JJ Redick is a guy.
So
they
JJ
signed,
there, granted.
And like I said, Colangelo brings in Amir Johnson. They're trying to.
It's
do
going to be
some
big,
of that.
yeah.
They're trying to do some of that, but you're right. It's Dwane Casey always says there's no magic wand that you can tap a guy with, and all of a sudden he goes from the brain of a 19-year-old to a brain of a 30-year-old that understand. You've got to experience it and go through it.
Maturity. Yeah.
Before we go, Jonesy, you mentioned the Kellogg's
Yes.
Breakfast for Better Days voting is coming up. Where do they go for it, and how do they go about voting for this year's? I guess I'm not going to say winner because I think everybody's a winner.
Yes.
But that where they can place their vote?
Well, it's to recognize
Exactly.
people that really contribute to the breakfast program, and like there's a lot of people that have hands in this. When you think about the Breakfast Clubs of Canada, what they do, the survey that's done by Breakfast Clubs Canada, surveying the teachers to give us these stats about productivity in the classroom and how important breakfast is, and it's to recognize a volunteer.
Gotcha.
And it's the
And there's
website.
there's so many volunteers out there, and a million thanks to everybody that's
They give
spending
their time.
some time.
Yeah. And David, Mike, sometimes time is more important than money. It really is. And so the website is kellogg'sfeedingbetterdaysaward.com.
Okay.
The nominations close at help me, Victoria, 11:59 on Friday,
Oh, okay.
and it's a $10,000 award. But again, get involved in a breakfast club. Make sure kids go to school fed, because it helps that kid, it helps the classroom, it helps the whole school. It helps discipline, it helps learning. You need the right fuel. You need the right fuel.
It gives them a chance.
It gives them a chance.
And they got the right guy, heading it up and helping out, leading the way. So well done, Jonesy.
Thanks for having me in, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jonesy. Great to see you. Hopefully we get a chance to do this again sometime. I know it gets a little busy coming from here on in, but we appreciate it here on rawmickrichards.com.
What? We just become best friends? Yep.